And we should be live. So I'd like to welcome everybody to another one of the My Metabolic Life Metabolic Therapy Healing Stories. Today we've got Colleen on, and Colleen's joining us from New Jersey. And Colleen has just an amazing story of complete health healing and transformation, which way beyond all of that, she'll then get into how this is really kind of changing her life going forward beyond just feeling like herself again. So enough of me. I'm going to turn it over to Colleen. And Colleen, can you please share? You've had a really interesting and up and down journey with all of this that I've heard, and I'd love you to share it with the audience.
Yes, and thank you for having me on, Brett. Um, so it's hard to start where how I turned carnivore without being given some background. So I'm going to start with the fact that I come from not a background of like full health to begin with, even as a child. So I grew up with a lot of processed food. I pretty much grew up with a sad diet. Aside from the fact that like my mother cooked, thank God she cooked dinners, because if she didn't, I mean, that would have probably just been cereal as well. So aside from my mother's cooking, it was 90s junk food fest. And by the time I was a teenager, I was riddled with like a lot of autoimmune symptoms. At the time, I didn't even understand that they were autoimmune symptoms. But like fatigue, fogginess, exhaustion. I always got sick so easily, always had a lot of stomach problems. And just doctors deemed me normal though. Like they were like, that's normal. Nothing ever got red flagged. And so that sticks out to me. I always like to bring that up because, for other parents out there, like be mindful that, these things you may be, your kid may seem fine and the doctors may say, well, they're fine. Their blood work comes back fine. But trust me, there may be something brewing. And that's what happened with me. And by the time I was a teenager, I still had a lot of, I guess they were considered minor things. Freshman year of high school, I got Epstein-Barr. I got mono and Epstein-Barr, which a lot of people get. It's pretty common, but there is a link there to MS. And I struggled really, really bad with that. The mono and Epstein-Barr, I struggled really, really bad with that. That took me out. I was out of school for like a month and a half. It was I remember feeling like I was on my deathbed with that. And the effects of the Epstein-Barr stay with you, and it's a pretty vicious virus. And anybody who has it understands the fatigue and the exhaustion and that you battle. And then at the age of 16, I suddenly stopped being able to go to the bathroom, and it literally out of nowhere. I just got chronically constipated. So yeah, not number one, number two. And chronic constipation is no joke. It was horrible. Like the pain it causes, the discomfort is through the roof. And that became a chronic problem at 16 on. And I just could not figure out why. I would go to gastroenterologists. They were completely useless to me. Completely useless. And I tried everything, every over the counter thing, every gastroenterological medicine. They would prescribe me stuff and just nothing helped until someone put me on brand cereal, and then that kind of led me down like some research of plant-based research. And around the age of 25, I watched a plant-based documentary, and that really sucked me in and really tugged at my heartstrings with the animals and just completely condemning red meat and all things all animal foods. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have to switch to plant milks. And I did all the nut milks, and I switched to eating like oatmeal every morning and more brand cereal. And I started making a lot of green smoothies and green juices. And I just became really I didn't become vegan at that point, but I became really heavily plant-based, thinking, I was sold on this documentary, like this has to be the way. And the green smoothies did help my chronic constipation issue because all the
Okay.
roughage naturally. So because it helped get things moving along, I thought, well, this must really be the token that, this must be really be the right decision. And so I kept going with that. And I was very heavily plant-based. And within like 2 to 3 years, I had kidney stones and thyroid nodules and thyroid issues. And the kidney stones, oh my gosh, I passed them one night. It was like being in labor. It was horrific. You
It
did
was the
too.
worst experience of my life, physical pain wise. Yes.
Oh my God. Yes. I remember screaming in pain. It was so hard. And I threw up and I was like, what? It was so weird. It was the weirdest thing. And then as soon as I passed it, instantly everything stopped. Everything shut off. It was just like labor. They say, the same thing as with labor. So weird. But anyway, then I kept going plant-based. I maintained low immunity issues. I would get sick easily still. And I was like, what? How is this possible? I thought I'm doing like a really healthy thing for myself. And I had gut issues still. A lot of gas, bloating, a lot of gas and bloating. And then around the age of 28, 29-ish, my skin started breaking out really bad. My skin looked terrible. So I was like, what the heck? So I started doing a lot of research, came across the vegan community. People in the vegan community swearing it clears up your skin. And I was like really looking to clear up my skin. Like really, that's what I was looking for. So I was grasping onto anything. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to go full vegan. I'm really, really plant-based, but maybe I need to take that extra step and just go like full blown vegan. So I did. And I went raw, mostly raw vegan. I followed this diet called like Raw Till 4. And it's like you eat raw vegan all day and then a cooked vegan meal for dinner. And so I did that, and it promotes a lot of fruit and like 8 bananas in a fruit smoothie with dates, and it was horrible. It was hard. It was like, wake up and eat as much fruit as you can. The pain that put me in, and it took me out. Like I would be at work like dying of gas pain and just this stomach bloat. I looked like I was pregnant. Like my stomach was so distended from all the bloat and just so much discomfort from that. And I stuck with that for months on end, just hoping it would like clear up and I could push through it and it would get better. And by like month 7, I had to tap out and it was just too painful. It was really painful. And so I went back to like my old plant-based model, and still skin not great. And but I went on with my life and things were a little bit better with my old plant-based model, because at least I think at that point I may have brought back in eggs, and that helped. I remember thinking like I need some sort of animal food because that'll help my stomach feel better. I don't know why I thought that, but I remember thinking that intuitively, that I need like eggs or like chicken here and there, or like some fish here and there. And so I did, and that was a good thing. And I remember feeling better. You would think that it would have clicked in my head and I would have been like, wait, I'm feeling better bringing back in these animal foods. Why don't I just eat more animal foods? But again, like the brainwashing, because you are sold on this narrative they push, and they're really good at what they do. They're really good at pushing that and selling it to you. And so fast forward to around the summer of 2017, I was working for a plant-based company. And like I said, at this point, I'm still mostly plant-based, but I think I brought back in like eggs here and there just for like mornings. But I was eating like eggs with oatmeal, and I treated steak like a cheat food because by nature, I love steak. By nature, I love animal foods, to be honest. I grew up loving bacon, eggs, steak, meatloaf, all of that. And, but I had it in my head, it was bad for you, so try and avoid it. And so I considered getting a steak out at a restaurant as a cheat meal. That's like the conditioning that I had, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. Um, and some people are like, people that did it for ethical reasons probably would never ever have done that, but people that were doing it just for pure health and skin benefits. Yeah, so I was one of the people that I was just looking for health benefits and better skin. So like I was like, I'm not like 100% great, but for the most part I was all plant-based, except for those cheat meals where I got a filet mignon at a restaurant. And so I was working for a plant-based company in the summer, and then I throw this into my story because I do think that it's related. It's a little bit controversial, but I think there's a relation here. And I think that it all compounds together to create the perfect storm for what happened to me. And I got a neck adjustment when I've never had a neck adjustment before. And I was accompanying my mother to her appointment. And I was trying to sell her chiropractor this plant-based thing that I was working for. And because she told me, you should come into my chiropractor. He's into all that. He loves all the organic things and health things. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I went in, and while I was there, he convinced me to get adjusted. And because I had, good insurance through the school. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess everybody gets adjusted. Like, sure. And I got this neck adjustment. And the next day, I just don't think it was made for me. He did not take imaging before he did this. And something went wrong, I think. And the next day, I couldn't get out of bed. And I felt like I had brain damage. And I felt like I was in like a borderline medically induced coma state almost.
Mm-hmm.
Where I like couldn't wake up. If I had to get up, it was just to go to the bathroom and go right back into bed. And I had to like scale the walls to like keep myself up because I was so disoriented and so dizzy and so out of it. And I stayed in bed for days. And I remember just trying to piece together like what could have happened to me, like what the hell, what happened to me, because I
Mm-hmm.
was never this bad. This is really bad. Like I can't even open my eyes. I couldn't think straight. My brain felt disoriented. um,
And all of
so,
that was just after that one adjustment.
yeah. And I always
Wow.
put that out there because I have found if that can help anybody, because it's not talked about enough. And I do think that there is, I have since found a lot of other people with MS, and there's a connection with MS and neck injury. Now, I had a combination of both, where I had a predisposition of autoimmune, and all the autoimmune stuff in my blood work always flagged like ANA markers or whatever. And I had Epstein-Barr, which is a link. So, I don't take those away. I definitely was an autoimmune mess. And I had the gut of an autoimmune patient. I had all the gut problems. So, but something triggered these horrific brain symptoms after that adjustment, because I had never experienced this degree of, this felt like I was medically put into a induced state of something, like drug induced state. It
Well,
was
while we're here, can
very
I just
severe.
kind of jump in with a quick thought?
Yeah.
Because as you're aware, Emily introduced us, and she was on Emily Pettin's podcast, and just an incredible episode. Anybody who has MS concerns, here's two people who have healed from MS. Go listen to them together there as well. And just in recording with Emily just Friday, a couple days ago, and going deep diving into her story,
Mm-hmm.
with everything else she was going through beyond the MS stuff, that you understand her story,
Yeah.
it seemed that she realized she had the MS for years before it came out in the diagnosis. And it was when certain symptoms showed up because of some changes she was making that what I'm just kind of hearing now with both of your stories together
Mhm.
is that possibly the MS was there, and maybe whether there was a lesion somewhere on
Yeah.
in the neck that this then triggered something to activate
Yeah.
something that was kind of maybe sleeping or going to be coming out later.
Oh yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
I believe that that's such a possibility. I always thought of that too. I'm like, it could have just like set it off and triggered it. It's just so strange. But I have since found a doctor that has a lot of MS patients and success with them too, with like correcting little things in the upper cervical region that have been damaged. And like with this little technique he does, it's like an atlas adjustment, and there's no cracking. And he says that there's such a link with MS and neck injury and neck misalignment, and it's really wild. I never would have believed that, but he has a lot of patients. So I always put it out there because if that can help someone else, because it's hell to feel that is hell. I mean, I literally being a prisoner in your body. That's like the best description. Even though thank God, like I wasn't like paralyzed, so it wasn't to that degree, but still, the debilitation of the brain, what it did to me, it was horrific. So anybody that's out there going through upper cervical symptoms might understand that and get something out of it. But anyway, that started to settle down, and after a while it settled down, but it was never the same. I was always like messed up in the head. Like literally I felt messed up in the head. And so I went and saw an ENT because people around me were telling me it sounds like you have vertigo. And so I was like, okay. So I went and saw an ENT, and um, he said, so you have vertigo, or are you spinning? And I said, I'm not spinning. Thank God I was not spinning, but I felt like movement. I felt like dizzy without feeling spinning and disoriented. And so he was alarmed by that because he was like, I hate neck adjustments. He's like, you people have gotten strokes from them. And you don't ever let anybody touch your neck. And I'm like, great. And so he's like, I want you in an MRI right away to make sure you didn't have a stroke. So he was checking me for signs of a stroke. And come to find out, there are people who have had, so many people who have had strokes from, it's just not talked about enough, and not, you know, it's just not out there enough. So he checked me for a stroke, no signs of a stroke. There did show white matter changes at this point though. But he said, other than that, everything seems fine. And he wasn't alarmed because there were no MS lesions yet. So, okay, I get sent on my way. My brain is cleared, I thought. And I went on my way. But I had to go on a chemical stimulant just to wake me up, to get me out of bed and get through my work days. Otherwise, I would have lost my job because my brain just could not function the same. It was terrible. And it would come and it would get worse depending on how I ate, but I didn't know that because I didn't have the education that I now have, like about how food affects the body and disease. Like I didn't understand any of that. And I didn't understand that I was making the inflammation worse. So I didn't know to treat it through diet, other than I still did like all my green smoothies, and I was still trying to be as plant-based as possible, thinking that would help at least make me feel better in some way, I guess, with inflammation. And so I go on this stimulant. That's how I get through my job and keep my job, and that's how I keep anything in my life because I could hardly function. And then I get pregnant that fall. And so during pregnancy, I just kind of was like so defeated, and I felt kind of crappy during pregnancy, especially the later it got in my pregnancy. I just felt very fatigued and very heavy. My pregnancy, carrying a baby for me, was a little painful. So I remember being just like so defeated, and I was like, I'm just eating whatever I want. And I craved sweets really badly when I was pregnant, and I let myself have them, and I ended up with diabetes. And so the
Gestational diabetes?
gestational diabetes, yep, but I was absolutely I think I had diabetes to begin with. I wish I got my fasting uh, insulin and bloods from back then, and like because now I understand them better, and I would love to see what they were, because there's no way I wasn't a pre-diabetic. I was always on a blood sugar roller coaster, so I had such blood sugar issues. And that was explaining a lot of the times when I'd be at work, and I'd be like fine in the morning, and then mid-morning or like afternoon, I literally would just nosedive, like felt like I was literally dying. It was torture. And I would say this is torture. It's torturous to be alive. Like, it's so taxing to be alive. And so anyway, I said to the specialist, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? I have been craving a lot of sweets, and I've been letting myself eat them, and I never eat like that. Like, I really don't. I was eating a lot of like sugary cereals and tasty cakes and like processed sweets, and I never used to let myself eat like that, except for when I was a kid. I ate like that when I was a kid. But he goes, no, don't, no, it's not you. This is nothing to do with diet. And so that's what he told me, is that my gestational diabetes had nothing to do with my diet. And I beg to differ. I do believe that if I was pregnant now, there's no way, with the way I eat, that I would ever have any blood sugar issue, insulin issue, or diabetes. But that's neither here nor there. I can't take it back. So I ended up, I had to prick my finger every morning, or do the blood sugar test every morning, and I couldn't get it down. It was getting up and up and up, and it was getting me afraid, because I was starting to get afraid, because they said it can be if your sugar levels or whatever gets too high, it can be dangerous for the baby. So I just said, you know what, I can't get this in control, so give me the meds. So I went on diabetes medication, and I don't remember what it was called, but they gave me a diabetes medication, and it was a pill, I believe, because I wasn't an injection. I would have remembered that.
Right.
But I remember going on. I remember
Maybe
going on.
metformin. Does metformin sound familiar?
It's so funny. I was talking about this the other night with another broadcast, and someone was asking me recently. I'd be interested to call that office and ask them what's the medication, because they prescribed it for me. So
Sure.
I would be interested to see what diabetes medication I was on, because I can't remember the name. I just remember through my pregnancy, I was very like fed up and tired. And I just was like, whatever, just get me through this pregnancy. I don't care. Give me the meds. That was my outlook. Oh, and I had chronic acid reflux, which is obviously very common during pregnancy, but mine was so bad, it used to make me cry. I used to cry up at night, just cry. And because I just couldn't take the torture of it was constant. And I like lived off the Tums. But even prior to that and after my pregnancy, I had a ton of acid reflux. I have not had acid reflux not one single time since I've been carnivore. Not once. It's like incredible. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I get through my pregnancy. Thank God I have my son. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. And then I go off of the diabetes medicine, but I definitely stayed having blood sugar issues, but I had a pretty good postpartum experience. And I think that's because, this is a very big thing with MS. Any woman with MS will tell you too, any woman that's had babies, that pregnancy, there's something with pregnancy and breastfeeding that protects your body. Like it's something that your body goes into some sort of protection mode, and it like protects you from the MS and from progression. So it's known that like women are usually in remission or considered like no disease progression during pregnancy. And I think also during breastfeeding, at least for me, it was still, I was in pretty good shape at postpartum, with feeling better, like feeling more like, you know, myself, and pretty high functioning. And I remember being pretty okay. And then when I stopped breastfeeding, something shifted. So hormones must have shifted, and symptoms came flooding in and hit me like a train. And it was everything, like just brain fog, fatigue, depression, and and the depression was from the symptoms. It wasn't just like nothing else was wrong and I just felt sad. It wasn't like that. My depression was strictly from my symptoms, because they were so depressive, and they put you in such a dark head place that it's hard to feel joy. Like you just can't, because your brain is so clouded and fogged, so you just cannot feel happiness and joy. And I would fake it, though. I would fake it all the time to people, because I didn't want anybody to know that I felt like such shit. Excuse my language. But like, I didn't want people to know that. So I hid it. So a lot of people that have known me or interacted with me would never tell you, oh, she's, she was sick or depressed. Like they would be like, what? She didn't seem it, because I hid it. I was so embarrassed. I never wanted anybody to know that anything was wrong with me. And also it was too taxing to have to explain it. Like I just never wanted to even have to explain that. So for me, it was easier to just say, hey, how you doing? I'm fine. I'm good. And when people say, how you doing? I wasn't going to be like, actually, I feel like death. Because then you have to go into an explanation. And I didn't have the capacity to even go there. I just was too tired, and everything was too taxing for me. So around this time, when all my symptoms exploded and I felt so debilitated, I was just coming out of maternity leave, I think. I was still on maternity leave when this happened. And I remember laying down one day. We had plans. We were supposed to go somewhere. And I just was like, I can't move. And I like flopped down on the bed. And my husband's like, what is the matter? I'm like, I literally feel like I am dying. I feel like I am being poisoned to death. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And my skin was so broken out and rashy, rosacea. I was like, what? I looked in the mirror, didn't even recognize myself. I looked like I was aging. I would look in the mirror and cringe. I'm like, this is not me. I look puffy. I look inflamed. I look old. I looked like haggard, and I felt, and my skin was all broken out and rashy and rosacea. And I was just like, I don't even want to look in the mirror anymore. This is horrific. And at that time, someone brought to the attention, they brought to my attention that it could be from my breast implants, and breast implant illness is like a big thing. And it's a real thing. And a lot of women get ill from their breast implants. So I was like, oh, and I had breast implants. So I was like, oh, well, maybe that makes sense. Like maybe my body's just completely rejecting them now after breastfeeding. And so I went ahead and got them removed, because I wasn't playing around. I was not messing around with my health. I was like, I don't care about these stupid things anymore. Get them out of my body. I don't need them. And I did get them out, and I did feel a big relief in inflammation at first from getting them out. And I felt like a ton better at first. But eventually the symptoms did come back, because I also didn't change what I was putting into my body eating wise. So, I didn't understand enough about what I know now, like seed oils and all that. Like I didn't know. I had no clue. So I would cook with unhealthy oils, and even cooking what I thought was a healthy meal, I would cook with unhealthy inflammatory seed oils, and I would still eat processed things that are labeled healthy and that I thought were a health food, and were still had it was not a health food. They still had seed oils in them and other inflammatory things in them, gut irritants and almond flour and stuff like that. So I was still eating processed things that I thought were healthier versions of processed of food. And so I don't regret getting my breast implants taken out. I always love to make sure I say that, because there are a lot of women out there that are sick with implants, and when they get them out, they have a ton of relief. But just for me, it wasn't enough. I still had an autoimmune storm going on, and hormone issues, insulin issues, blood sugar issues, gut issues, all the things. So and again, even my MS specialist, when he found out I got them removed, he was happy. He was like, as an MS specialist, he's like, I do not want those in your body if you have MS, because it is a form. Like, he confirmed that it would only make things worse, and that it's a foreign object, and that, you know, it will be a source of inflammation. So I am happy they're out. But everything I still was fighting all these symptoms, and I was, at this point, trying to get through work was hell for me. And I was really starting to tank and fail at work. Like, my vision got really messed up. And even though my vision exams come back perfect because my optic nerve isn't affected, thank God.
Yeah.
But the disorientation and like the brain fog, it messed with my vision. I don't know how to quite explain it, other than like, it made things really hard to look at. I became very light sensitive. It was hard for me to track and read emails. Like, looking at the screen was too taxing. So like, I would miss a lot of emails from like my bosses and stuff. And I'd be all like, I was so disheveled. Like, I just never knew when things were, what I was supposed to be doing. I would miss like important things sometimes. So I was starting to be questioned at this point. They're like, you missed this, you missed that. Like, what's going on? And at this point, I don't have a diagnosis. So I definitely am not bringing up my health, because how embarrassing is that? Like, I can't even blame a diagnosis at this point, because I don't have anything. And I just know that I can't keep up. I can't keep up. My brain feels like it's failing. I feel like I'm crashing and dying at work every day, and blood sugar roller coaster, plus the brain symptoms. It was horrible. I was just such an inflamed disaster. So I watched a juicing documentary around this time, and I remember I got hooked on that, and I became a juice factory in my house. It became a freaking juice factory, and I juiced the entire rainbow. I was like, I'm going to heal myself through this, because they say it's more bioavailable if you juice the stupid plants. And so I believed that, and I went and did that, and I got hooked on the celery juice and the medical medium stuff. I did celery juicing for like almost 2 years. I can't remember if it was like a year and a half or almost 2 years. Crazy that I'm like, how? But it's a testament to how desperate I was. Because when you're desperate, you'll do anything. And I feel so validated when I talk to other people about this in this space, because they're like, me too. Like, hashtag me too. Like, I was there, you know, like they all make me feel a lot better, because people who have never been through any form of health journey are like, what? You did what? Who would do all of that? But I just was so desperate. And so celery juice every morning. I had a terrible reaction from celery juice. Terrible. My shoulders would break out in like breakouts, and like itchy bumps, and it was so embarrassing. I remember like being in the summertime and wanting to like cover up, because I looked broken out on my shoulders. And I would have these weird rashes I would get after the celery juice. And the people in the celery juice community are like, no, that's just detox. And I'm like, okay, I've been celery juicing for over a year. Like, when does the detox end? And then I also did a lot of like other detox type of things, detox protocols, bentonite clay, like all the things. And nothing was working. So anyway, I think you catch the drift. So I'm desperate. I feel like death. I'm trying desperately to do everything I can. Still nothing's working. And around this the spring of 21, one thing led to another to get me more imaging. And the new imaging came back is when we found the lesions. And there was a little one in my neck and there was a bunch in my brain. And that hit me like, uh, that was like a bomb went off, because I was like, I was in such denial. But I also, in fact, I was in such denial that I switched doctors, because I didn't like that answer. I was like, no, this has to be wrong. I'm switching doctors. Like I can't have MS. There's no way. And um, I guess that's my ego, because I was always athletic and I just like couldn't accept that this was like, I picture MS and I picture wheelchairs and walkers and people who are like debilitated, so terrible things. And like, I just could not accept that for myself. And, and so I switched doctors. But all the while it was like this dichotomy of like, this has to be wrong. I'm going to go to a doctor and get a new thing. But also like, I think my life might be over, because I had to accept some form that this could be real. And if it is, then I thought it was a death sentence. And I was like, I'm going to go check with another doctor and get a second opinion. Hopefully they say not. But like, if this is like, my life's over. That's what I really thought. I had no hope. So I switched doctors, and it took several months to get into a new neurologist, because as you know, neurologists they take a while to get into. So in that in between, I was doing some research on MS, and I came across Dr. Terry Walls. That's when I discovered Dr. Terry Walls. And Emily and I both started off kind of reading her stuff and looking into her stuff. Now, I didn't actually read her book, because at this point in time, my brain was too compromised for me to sit down and I physically could not read. So I got like, so I got like the Cliff's Notes version. And I was like, okay, so Dr. Terry Walsh, she does healthy meat, is kind of like a ketogenic. She does healthy meats, organs, and she introduced me to organs. So I was like, okay, I got to somehow start doing organs. And, but she does 8 cups of vegetables a day. So I was like, shoot, 8 cups of vegetables a day. I'm like, that's a lot. How am I going to do that? Oh, I know. I'll juice it and drink it, and I'll make more smoothies. So I just continued to oxalate bomb myself. And then by the time I got into the new neurologist office, he did further imaging, because it had been, and he found more lesions, and he did a spinal tap, and he confirmed that I have MS. And I was like, okay, I found this doctor. Look at her, Dr. Terry Walls. She reversed her MS, and her MS is worse than mine. And he like laughed. He was like, no. He's like, don't even think about it. You have to go on meds. Like there's no other option. You have to be on meds. You're young. You're still pretty healthy. And I'm like, but am I? Because I feel like I'm dying. I wouldn't label me healthy. And he's like, well, we don't want you to get worse. So you have to go on meds, and, you just have to go on meds. Like there's these diets don't work. Those people, it doesn't work for them. They don't last. And I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't like that answer either. So I switched from him to an MS specialist. And in the meantime, it took 6 months to get into there. So and I did not go on this guy's meds. So he was not happy with me. I did not go on the meds. And then I was waiting till I saw the specialist. In the meantime, I was following more of the Terry Walls protocol. And her protocol is pretty great. She's helped a lot of people. She reversed her own MS. And a lot of people, I actually personally know 2 people with MS on her protocol that are doing phenomenal with no medication.
And she's a doctor. So it's not like she's a lay person who just came up with this approach, without any kind of understanding of scientific method and so forth.
Exactly. Yes. And I personally am friends with 2 people that are on her protocol that have had no disease progression in years since starting the protocol. Yeah. And it's now been at least 7 years for the one girl I know, and then like over 10 years for this guy I know. So her protocol does do a really great job for people, but just in the state I was in, I needed simplicity. and I was still finding it a little difficult. And how I was getting all the servings of vegetables was I just drove up the plants. I was like, all right, let me go plant. I went really plant heavy, but I did start incorporating a little bit of organs and some healthy meats. And I dropped gluten because she's the one who said, like, if you have MS, you cannot have gluten or dairy. And I was like, okay, let me get rid of gluten and dairy. And just the removal of gluten alone, I did feel a little bit of a difference. So I remember thinking, like, so I was feeling a difference on the Walls protocol, but I was like stalling. It like wasn't enough. And I probably wasn't doing it right. And I want to put that out there because I don't want anybody to be deterred from her protocol either, if that works for you. But I was oxalate bombing myself. I was juicing everything. Like at this point, I'm even juicing broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower. Like I'm juicing all the vegetables because I'm like, I don't have, and then I would pack myself a big salad for lunch of like, spinach, kale, like greens, and then a bunch of cruciferous vegetables. And when I tell you the bloat and the gas from that, like a lot. So, but I think I probably was doing it wrong, but this was my desperate attempt to like get in all these servings of vegetables. And I just drove up the plants in that way with salads and juicing more of them and even juicing the vegetables. And I was still on a blood sugar roller coaster from that because even the plant juices, like they just had me like this all the time. And so I was still struggling. And then I finally got into the specialist. So I saw this doctor who told me, don't even attempt the diet, just go on meds. He was in January. It took till June to get into my specialist office. So because so many months had gone by, the specialist wanted more imaging. He wanted updated imaging. And sure enough, more lesions showed up. And when he shows me it and he pulls up the screen and he's going through layer by layer of my brain, showing me all the lesions everywhere, I almost fainted on the floor. I was like, holy shit. And then they're drawing my blood, and I had a total breakdown in that office that day because I just was so overwhelmed. It's when I really accepted like that this is real and it's bad. And he's like, and my specialist is amazing. I just want to put that out there. He's the first neurologist that I actually love. Like he's open-minded, he's good bedside manner. He's because the two that I saw before him were a little rough around the edges and not like very sensitive to how they talk to you. And this guy's not like, he's great. He's open-minded. He'll treat me even like with or without meds. He'll still be he'll still monitor he'll still monitor me. But he talked, when he showed me the updated images at this point, he was like, you really need to go, consider it. And I was like, he's like, this is, and he is right in this term that MS meds that are out now are nothing in comparison to what it was 20, 30 years ago. They are very different and they seem to be more effective these days in stopping the progression. They don't really do anything about symptoms, but they can help stop progression. So I'm not anti-meds, I'm just anti not be on them if you don't have to. So I did say, all right, at this point, I'm like, I can't take it anymore. Like, I'll take the meds because I'm so scared. And I just see it keep progressing. And I just keep seeing, and I'm visually seeing now. They're showing me my images, and it scared the hell out of me. And I'm seeing all the progression and lesions in my brain. And I'm like, okay, so put me on it. So this was in the summer of 22. So it was like August of 22 is when I agreed to go on the medication. And I had to do a ton of like pre-testing and stuff to make sure I can go. Went on a monthly infusion called Tysabri. And so by early October, 22 is when I started Tysabri, the MS medication. But coincidentally, that's the same month I found carnivore. That's the same month I found Emily. And when I found her, and I tell this on in her podcast, how I literally had, I had been feeling, I had been contemplating, I had really dark thoughts at this point, because at my worst, I could not be upright without feeling like I was going to faint. That was how bad it was. And I would come home and just crash and be useless. I'd spend weekends, entire weekends in bed, where my husband had to pick up all my slack. I felt like a burden. And my husband's a saint. He did everything without complaint. And he felt horrible for me and was so supportive. But I felt terrible I felt horrible being laid up so often out. Like, I'd go to work and do what I had to do, although I did have to take a lot of days off. And then I'd come home and be like useless. And at my worst, I remember finally I started telling my family, even, because it just started leaching over. Like, I didn't ever want to tell anybody. I was always too embarrassed. But I would start even telling my sister and my parents, like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. I want out of this body. I can't take it. This body is cruel. It makes me suffer. And I just want to escape my body. Like, I want to crawl out of my skin. That's how I would always say it to my husband. I'm like, I just want to crawl out of my own body. Like, get me out of this. And sorry, it's a little emotional talking about this.
No, I don't know how you can't be.
It's hard. So I remember in one of those episodes of me being in bed and just crying and wanting to die, literally wanting to not be here anymore. I remember just like having a fit one day and just like screaming out to God, like, please, like, either take me and let me die, or send me something to like signal me to the right path of healing me, getting me out of this hell. Because I felt like I was living in a hell. And I felt like I was just like a prisoner in my brain, in my body. And literally that week, somebody tagged me in a comment and said, Colleen, you need to look into Emily Penton and look her up and look up the carnivore diet and look up the success it has with MS. And I was like, oh my God. And it was like something went off. It was like a beam of light came into the dark tunnel. And I looked her up. I went down the rabbit hole of research. And that next day, it clicked for me. It clicked like right away. I was like, I'm trying this. If this girl can do it, look, why can't I? Then I have a chance. Like, maybe I've just been doing it the opposite the whole time. So the very next day I went carnivore. And it's so funny how the universe works, because I remember when I used to be up in the vegan world and looking on, I would watch their channels. And I remember seeing them like, attack like some of the carnivores. And I'd be like, carnivore? What's carnivore? And then I'd be like, all they eat is red meat. And I remember thinking, that can't be healthy, because I was so brainwashed to think it's unhealthy. But at the same time, I'd be looking at the carnivores, because they would the channel would bring them up and like talk about them. And I'd be like, why do the carnivore people look so much healthier? And I'm like, the carnivore people look a lot healthier than the vegans.
Boy, they look 10, 15, 20 years younger than what they say their age is.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm like, these carnivores, like, man, for as unhealthy as they're eating, they sure do look great. You would think that would have clicked even back then, but I was so, misled. And I just was like, that can't be healthy. That sounds like it's a heart attack diet, like what everybody else says. And so that's what makes it kind of ironic and funny is like, I used to at least hear about the carnivores from the vegan world and used to notice how healthy they looked and muscular and fit. And the vegans didn't look like that. So I should have taken that hint. But so I went carnivore the next day, and I just started with basics like bacon and eggs in the morning and ground beef. I always have a ground beef in the house because my husband always ate it and my son. And so I was like, okay, I'll just do bacon, eggs, ground beef, like boom, done. And then I just each day got better. I would buy more carnivore foods at the store, and within like 3 to 4 days, I noticed a lift in my brain fog and an improvement in my mood, which was huge for me because I was used to being at work with my, trying to teach students and just feeling miserable and always questioning in my head that it never stopped saying in my head. It was the negative thought process of how am I going to get through this day? It never went off. Like the voice in my head was always, how are you going to make it through this day? This is miserable. This is misery. How are you going to make it through this day? And that day I didn't feel that. And I wasn't thinking those things. I was like, oh my gosh, I actually have some like, what is this? What even is this? Like, is this, am I having clarity? Like, am I thinking kind of clearly? Am I having a good mood right now? And that motivated me so much. I was like, yes, this is working. Like, this is going to do big things for me. And I remember thinking, I'm going to do something with this. I know it's going to work for me, and I'm going to do something with this because I cannot accept this diagnosis without making it a purpose and without doing something with it and helping other people. And so the more time went on, I got even better, and just things were improving. I did go through an oxalate dump. That sucked. But so there were some little hiccups, probably a little bit of the keto flu at one point. But other than that, I mean, I was going uphill for the most part. And so I was like, this is awesome. It inspired me so much just in the first few months alone. It inspired me to go back to an online school and get certified in health coaching. Because I knew that in the future I'd want to help people. And I wasn't ready at that time yet, but I knew that was going to be a path for me, was to help other people in any way, in some way. So I was like, let me just get certified for health coaching and I'll start there. And then 8 months later, in the spring of 23, I took a risk and I went off of my monthly MS infusion, my MS medication. And it was, my MS specialist is not happy about it. He does not want me off of it. But
how long were you on carnivore by the time that happened?
So that's the funny thing. So I started carnivore the same month that I started Tysabri, so that I started my MS meds. So this really was a risk because some people, when I was feeling better, I had family that was like, yeah, it's probably the meds. And I'm like, no. It's not that meds don't make you, and I asked around, I did my homework. I was like, I'm in the MS Facebook groups and I meet other people, and I would ask people like, did Tysabri help with I couldn't find a single person that has taken this medication and said it helped with the symptoms. So I was like, so my symptoms I'm not feeling better from the Tysabri. I'm feeling better from the diet. And I don't know, I just had a gut feeling that and this is just me. So I'm not a doctor. I would never tell anybody else ever to do this because some people still need the meds and they do best with just doing a diet with the meds. For me, I just felt like for me, I just wanted to try without the meds and see how I did, because I wouldn't have a true test for myself without doing this, but I would never recommend anybody else doing this. So I went off my meds and I was fine. I had like the best summer. So the summer 23, I had a great summer. I felt great. And then fast forward to this summer, I feel even better. This past summer and then going back to work this, going back to my teaching job this September, even better. Like I feel even better, and just things just keep evolving to get even better. And things cleared up and healed that I didn't even know needed healing, because like I said, I was kind of sickly as a kid, so I just kind of accepted that it was normal to feel like absolute death upon waking up and getting out of bed. Like I just accepted it was normal. And, my mother always used to tell me, when I was a kid, getting me out of bed, she used to say, you are a beast to get out of bed, to get me out, to like get me in ready in time for school. She was like, you are a beast getting you out of bed, because I just was always in, and I didn't know this, but now that I know what I know, I was inflamed. Even as a child, I was inflamed. And so, and I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I was inflamed my whole life, pretty much. Like, that is so sad that I didn't know that. And that's why I could never wake up. And that's why I would have I would have slight reactions to things and never knew. I just all accepted it as normal, like allergy reactions. I would wake up with like puffy, swollen eyes. And again, like, I never attribute it to my food. Like, why would I attribute it to my food? I would blame the atmosphere. I would blame, it was what I was eating. And I just, my gut has completely healed. Like, I cannot believe. Oh, and my skin, when I showed before and after pictures on my Instagram page of my skin, and those weren't even of the, like, some of the befores aren't even from when my skin was at its worst. I'll try and look for the really bad ones, but oh my gosh, the rosacea cleared up, and my acne took a while to clear up, actually. So anybody out there struggling with acne, and if it's taking a while, it may be because your gut for me, I think my gut was so ripped up and messed up that my gut needed to heal, because finally, I want to say after like a year and a half, my skin finally really started to clear and be more like stably clear without breakouts. So that took a while, but it's clear now. It's so clear, so nice to have clear skin. I didn't have clear skin for a long time. And my thyroid's doing better, because I was under the care of a endocrinologist to have it monitored because of the nodules. And my it seems to be stable. And oh my God, like, just not living in a world with no gas and acid reflux and bloat. I cannot believe how you never bloat. I'm like, this is incredible. Especially for a female, like, we really have to, we care about those things, and to never, ever, ever be bloated is so awesome. So girls out there, like, get on this. It's so good. Oh, and my menstrual, every month, my menstrual cycle is no pain. No longer is there any pain. That is also a miracle, because I used to have very painful periods, and I never even have to take an ibuprofen or a Tylenol, never anymore for that. That's awesome. But yeah, my brain MRI was the first one. So a month ago, I got my updated brain MRI. So that was almost 2 years carnivore, and over a year off of meds, and it's completely stable. And some of the lesions are even showing reduction, as per a specialist that I see in New York State that took a look at my neck, and he did a lot of neck imaging.
Yeah.
And he did, like I said, he did this like atlas adjustment, and he did that around the time I got off of meds. So like I was really taking a risk, because I got off of meds, and then I got this atlas adjustment, and I did have a little flare in my symptoms from that, but he said it was going to be like that. He said it was going to be like a, what did he call it? An inflammatory state. He's like, you're going to go through like a little inflammatory phase where you're going to feel a little, you know, symptomy for like a week or two, but it'll pass. And it did. And so I also think that that helped me. Like, I don't know, you know, it's a little controversial, but I also think that that helped me. And he does like really intense, like in-depth imaging. And he did find like some things in my neck that were like blocking the CFS fluid. So similar to like what football players might experience with a concussion, like
Right.
with the CFS fluid not flowing in and out of their head. Like Jim McMahon went to this guy, the famous Chicago Bears football player. So, and he has like, he has a lot of improvement from seeing him, and he had similar symptoms to me. So that's interesting. So I do think that that helped, but I also think that I would not ever be here right now without the carnivore diet. and just and cutting out all the garbage and just putting in all the proper human food that we're supposed to have. So
Absolutely amazing.
yeah.
I mean, I'm watching the smile. I'm looking at the energy that's coming out of you and hearing kind of what you were describing as like a personal hell for
Yeah.
over like a decade plus, and just always being sick from as long as you can remember young.
Yeah.
I mean, you're so engaging and vibrant and just full of life. I'm just like, wow, I can't even imagine having seen you in the past.
I can't believe it either. Cause yeah, like my natural personality is to be like this, like, you know, bubbly and positive and happy and outgoing. And it turned me into like a different person. I felt so dark, and I felt so, I would even go into school. I became a different person in my place of work. Like I used to be like a part of everything. I became closed off. I didn't want to talk because everything was too taxing. It was too taxing. I just was there to get through the day and then leave. And then I couldn't I didn't have the capacity to do anything extra, nothing. So I didn't want to be social anymore. I would hide out in my room. And, you know, and now I'm back there, and I'm back being like more bubbly and, you know, more engaging with people. Like I didn't want to engage with anybody either, because I didn't want them to also perhaps notice something wrong with me if like I let my guard down. Because, you know, at one point it was this affecting my speech. When it was really bad, it was affecting my speech. And then there was times I would break down at work because I'd be at work and I couldn't handle that this was my life. I was like, I cannot believe this is my reality, that I live like this every day, where I feel like I'm dying. And I feel like my brain is deteriorating. That's what my brain felt like. It felt like it was deteriorating. And at my very worst, I brought this up on Emily's show. I forgot to bring it up to you, but
Yeah.
I literally Googled human euthanasia, because I just thought, especially after, yeah, I Googled that. And because especially after that next MRI that showed even more progression with my specialist, I remember thinking, that's it. Like, I'm just going to keep, this is going to keep happening, and I'm just going to deteriorate, and there's going to be like nothing left of me. And I was like, I can't let that happen. Like, there has to be like something that they can do for humans like me, who are just going to deteriorate to nothing, and let me go out with dignity. Like, I don't want to be a person that just lays there and is useless and brain dead, because that was my fear. I was fearing that I was going to turn brain dead. So
Okay. We can go in a different direction there.
yeah, sorry.
Just look at the smile. I mean,
I know.
just a huge smile. And I can, you know, we've had a conversation before this, got to know each other, and I understand that you're such a natural, outgoing person,
Yeah.
but that you felt the need to have to kind of hide and everything just because You couldn't be you.
I just couldn't. Yeah. Yeah. I would still post pictures of my kid on Facebook, and like I would get like dressed up for a holiday though and take pictures. So I still played the role. Like, look, I'm normal, guys. Cause like I didn't want anybody to think anything was wrong with me. That to me was embarrassing. And I think a lot of people probably wouldn't understand that unless they've ever been like this, where it's just too, some people like attention for stuff like that. I'm the opposite. I
Yeah.
cannot, I do. Yeah. I'm the opposite of a hypochondriac, or the opposite of someone who likes attention for illnesses. Like, I'm the complete opposite. I would only want attention for something positive, not being sick and feeling like death. So I played a role, and I played it pretty good, because a lot of people didn't know. I got caught crying at work only like once or twice. And so a few people at work did know, because they caught me crying. But even them, like, I didn't tell them details, because it was just too taxing, and it was too depressing. So that's what, you never know what somebody's really going through. That taught me that. That's for sure.
Everybody's got something.
Everybody has something, and that's why I don't.
It might not be them, it might be somebody near them, but it's impacting
Yeah.
them, watching, trying to be the support. Like, what I'm sure this was incredibly taxing on your husband. I mean, trying to pick up all the slack on everything, raise the kid while you're trying to just
Yep.
get out of bed.
There were so many weekends, so many days where he had to pick up all the slack, and he's a saint. He always was my biggest supporter. He always saw that I tried, and that's why he never got fed up, because he saw that I was always trying. Like, I was trying to. I never just was like, I never leaned into my illness to where I'm like, that's it, I give up. I'm just, I was always fighting, and I put up a really big battle, and I mean, it won some battles, but I think I won the war.
I want to go in another direction, but I want to just ask a quick question. So when you said you heard about Emily, and that just triggered the brain, and it kind of made sense.
Yeah.
It was literally the next day that you kind of just jumped in with changing the eating. You never had a chance to talk to her or like interact or anything?
Nope. Literally just made sense to me. Something clicked in my head that I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, I don't know, it was like this tidal wave of like common sense that came ripping through my head. Like, duh, you idiot. Humans didn't evolve and thrive from just eating sticks and plants, like, and leaves. And like, that's just not how. It's just, everything started making sense. And I mean, I obviously did a lot of research that night, but next day I didn't even quite, like, I was like, I'm trying. And she just inspired me so much. I immediately went and watched her story first. But when I watched her story, it just clicked. And so much of what she said was similar to me, where she felt the same feelings, that she like hit the nail on the head with certain feelings that I felt, certain things that she said that I would say. And like that, like, we just can't take it anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore. Needing Adderall just to get you out of bed and functioning. I mean, she had it even more. I think she was even worse, because she was on like 80 milligrams. She took like 40 in the morning, which that's wild to me, because I was on 20 milligrams. And so a lot of times, because I don't like to take medication. So a lot of times I would break that in half and only take 10, and then possibly have to take a little bit, another 10 during the day. But she was on 80 milligrams. And when I saw she was on that much, and then she was able to get off of the Adderall completely, I was like, that is unbelievable. Let me talk about that real quick. I'm completely off of Adderall, and I still had to take a little bit, even my first year of carnivore, like because I had to be careful. You have to like taper off stuff like that. And, even though I was doing better, I still needed a small dose, and I just kept lowering the dose. and on my own, I would like break the pill up, and I would lower it, lower it, lower it. Finally, I mean, I haven't needed it since since like last year. I haven't needed it since last year. I never thought that would be possible. I was like, this is a miracle that I do not need a chemical amphetamine to wake me up anymore. It's a miracle.
Well, and then also just because you guys have different stories because you had different issues before the MS set in. And I've gotten to know Emily very well and recorded her a couple of days ago. She's out on my channel and I'm on her channel. But because for those who don't know, I reversed heart disease and metabolic syndrome and really bad arthritis with this metabolic therapy. And but she suffered from a lifelong bipolar scenario where she was a clinical mental health person working in hospitals and all over the place with people. And it was so devastating to her, she couldn't even do that anymore. And then the MS kicked in. And so she's reversed both of those things. With this. And I mean, just
she was even on lithium. That is like the most intensive psychiatric medication there is.
My mom was on it for 55 years.
No way. Wow.
My mom was bipolar. My older brother, 7 years older than me. And when she was pregnant with him around 22-ish, give or take, she had her first bipolar manic episode, and her father was bipolar. And so it's been through, you know, I grew up, I don't know what it's like to have a non-bipolar mom. So she passed about 12, 13 years ago. So.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Brett. That's so hard.
But as hard as it was on like my dad and my siblings.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she'd be gone for 2-3 months to one time a year and a half in an institution. But you think what it must have been like where you said you're now a prisoner in your body. She had no control over this manic and this whole, and then the depressive. And I mean, as bad as we probably all felt for ourselves, knowing she had no control.
I cannot even imagine that.
So anyhow, I don't want to lose that anymore. But so Emily started, and not trying to bleed your stories, but there's parallels here. That, you know, because she was, you know, she had degrees and she was a clinical mental health practitioner, and until she couldn't anymore. And then she got all of that back. But now she's on a mission to fix the world and help the world with all of this. And you've actually, like myself, also you know, now my life's about coaching and doing all of this. You've gone into this vein too. Tell me a little bit about that part of your story.
Yeah. So my coaching.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got certified as a coach, and that was like a year and a half ago. And so I started coaching last summer, and because last summer was the first summer in years that I felt like, oh, wow, like I feel like and I don't even like to say like my old self, because even my old self wasn't this good. I feel like I'm like just a better version of myself.
You hear that from your husband, that now you're even brighter than he ever remembered?
Yeah, oh, for sure. Like he's like, this is awesome. And this is something else I wanted to bring up, because this is a huge thing, I think, in the carnivore space. And I wish like this would be used in addiction space, because my brother is an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I used to drink way too much. I definitely drank more than I should have. And, you know, never to a point where it was like, you know, a major problem or I needed help, but it definitely was more than I should have ever done. And I think also being on Adderall, like, I think that made it worse for me to want it, because it would jack you up. You know, it hops you up. And so at night I would feel like I need something to bring me down. So I would rely on like glasses of wine to do that. And, unbeknownst to me, I mean, I really told myself that it's okay to have a little bit of this every night. I really told myself that to make it feel to make me feel better about it. Well, going on carnivore like obliterated not only my craving for alcohol, but like my tolerance for it. No, don't get me wrong. I still once, special occasions, I'll have like a glass of wine with my husband for, nice, outings, but it stops after one. Like, I'm just not interested. Like I can't tolerate it. I physically can't tolerate it the way I used to. So carnivore helped me kick that habit. It was a horrible habit. And I'm like, this should be used as like a protocol for addiction, because I swear it rewires your brain. You no longer can crave or want stuff like that. And like substances, you don't want that. And you're so sensitive to everything once you go carnivore, and like, I swear it should be used in like mental health and addiction. And I wish I could get my brother to do it. He's an addict and he struggles really bad. And and he eats a lot of sugar. He's like sugar addicted. So
Well, addictive personalities is usually not just really one thing. And the other sad, depressing part of this is beyond mental health issues, there's been a certain amount of alcoholism in the family and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And as you watch people go through all of this, they make you, somebody who never smoked a day in their life suddenly is coming out of rehab and they turn into a tobacco smoker because, well, I have to have some addiction. I gotta, do something. And you're just like, that's how just screwed up and upside down the world is. And I'm just going to throw a quick plug in for one. Something that I've written about in one of my blogs is that what's so mind-boggling with all of this, because we now realize that metabolic therapy, of which carnivore is metabolic therapy, a ketogenic diet is a metabolic therapy. There's a spectrum of all this, and you can do it as a vegetarian. I'm well aware of that, but that so much of mental health is improved, and people are reversing bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety, depression, which I bet you felt a great deal of this through your journey.
For sure.
But here's the nugget I wanted to bring up that's just mind-numbing to people, because people associate keto and or ketosis and all of this, that is a diet, because there's so many people who, like myself,
fad, you mean?
And Emily, Emily dropped 120 pounds. I dropped 115 pounds in 9 months. And
you guys are amazing.
So it gets labeled as a diet, but to me, it's a healing therapy that the side effect is the weight loss, because as all the hormones are working. But again, the point I wanted to make with this is it's really breaking into for eating disorders. So whether you're bulimic, you're anorexic, there's a dietitian that she's got a book out there, The Dietitian's Dilemma. And she was an anorexic for years and healed herself with a ketogenic diet. And she's out doing this in the mental health world. And people are like, no, you can't tell people about, because this is no, it's not a diet. It's healing therapy. And this goes back to Mayo Clinic in the 1920s, where they were reversing epilepsy in kids with a ketogenic diet, because they realized fasting was such a great, powerful thing for these kids. And now they're on the diet for like 5 years. If they take to it, and most do, and after 5 years, they no longer have epilepsy anymore.
That is incredible. I think I've heard of that. Yeah, that's incredible.
But then you also just think of that fasting has been a part of every culture and every major religion, and goes back to the Hippocratic Oath 6,000 years ago. And it just puts people in, the state. That's what the result of fasting is. And why people
I started fasting like 4 months ago, and I took my results to like the next level, like intermittent fasting.
Two things happening there. The fasting ramps up the ketosis, and it also because you became also then over time, you became fat adapted to the part of that. It can that fasting really wasn't ever a thing when you started implementing it once you're fat adapted.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't even dare dream of fasting in the beginning because, well, I didn't even understand fasting in the beginning. Like I was just like, because fasting didn't exist in my world, because when you're sugar addicted to fruit sugars and you're on a blood sugar roller coaster like I was all the time, you couldn't go longer than an hour or two without needing your next hit. It's like a drug. It really is. It's like addiction. It's very similar. I think that the same part of your brain lights up.
And I remember, I was raised in a Catholic family, Catholic church, and there's certain holidays that you're supposed to like
Yeah, same.
fast. Just mean not have, don't eat outside of meals, or go
Yeah, no
one
meat
meal.
on Fridays.
And you're like, I'm not going to come home from school and not have a ho-ho, a ding dong, or some
Yeah,
cookies or something. I mean, the thought, the whole hangry that when you're on that blood
yeah,
sugar roller coaster, you don't have evil or even energy going
yeah.
on. So tell me a little bit more about your coaching and how
Oh yeah,
are you
sorry.
enjoying it, and do you have some success stories out there?
Yeah, a few success stories already. Thank God. So I'm not too I don't over inundate myself yet with it because I am still teaching. So I have to keep it only just a few clients at a time right now. I'm hoping that I'm hoping that changes and I can start doing this full time. I would love it. But as of now, being a teacher, I keep it just a few clients, and that's what I can manage. And I want to be able to give my best to everybody. So, but I offer a good program, and I offer a lot of accountability, and so accountability coaching, and of course nutrition and diet coaching, and uh, so far, my clients have been great, and they see success. Some of them are just weight loss, and some of them are MS. And so far, success with both scenarios. Um, and someone from another country last summer reached out to me. It was from somewhere in Europe. We had like 3 phone calls somewhere in Europe, but we did the phone calls through an app, like through
Right.
the Instagram app. And he only signed up for like 2 or 3 sessions with me, and he had enough information that he did so well on his own that he was like, I'm feeling so much better. He had MS. And he's like, I'm feeling so much better that I'm just going to try and do this alone now. And I'm like, okay, keep me updated. And he kept me updated. He's doing great. So eventually when I would love to have I'm putting it out in the universe. So when I have a podcast and start up my start really posting on my YouTube channel, because I started it, but I just started with YouTube shorts.
Yeah,
I would love to have them all on.
absolutely. Well,
But it is rewarding. It's a rewarding job.
there's nothing better.
Yeah,
I mean,
it can be tough at times though, because there's some people that do, almost get mad at you because they feel like crap in the beginning, coming off of sugar and coming off of carbs. And there is such thing as the keto flu. That's real. My own husband, because I made him do a carnivore challenge a couple months back, and he was borderline annoyed with me because he had like the keto flu, and that was fixed with electrolytes.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
and you don't even have to go buy the electrolytes. I've just now come across Sole water, SOLE. And
oh cool.
you can take a mason jar and fill it up with quality, like either pink
Yeah,
Himalayan or other quality salts that still have all the trace minerals left in them. Morton
yeah,
salt does not. But you just take a mason jar and with good, I buy clean water and I structure it, and that's a whole other topic we won't get to today.
yeah.
But you just put like this amount in the mason jar, fill it up with water, and overnight, there's still a lot of salt down in the bottom, but it
Yeah,
saturated all the water. Otherwise, the salt would be gone. A tablespoon of that inside of here, and
yeah.
fill the rest up with just my regular structured water.
There you
And
go.
there's $40, $50 a month of savings of not buying electrolytes. And
That's
it's
awesome.
taking care of it all right there. So quick hint for your other coaching clients and for people that are on a
Yeah, I
budget.
always tell people to put like a healthy, like a Redmond salt in their water, no matter what. And so I help them get out of that. Like a lot of people, it's very common to feel a little wonky in the beginning when you first remove everything and cutting carbs, cutting sugar. Again, the same thing happened to my husband. He was having like what's that called when like like palpitations
Yeah.
and like dizzy spells, and I'm like, that's an electrolyte imbalance, like I'm telling you. And sure enough, and I said, and if it's not, you obviously have to go get seen because you shouldn't be having palpitations. But right after taking the electrolytes, it all went away. He was fine. And then his arthritis felt better. He's got raging arthritis in his knees from sports injuries. He played D1
Yes.
football. And so his knees are pretty banged up, and they were both reconstructed. So they're both pretty bad. He's going to need replacements eventually if he doesn't
I
completely go
don't,
carnivore.
I'll bet you he doesn't, because even without going full carnivore, because when I dropped the 115 pounds in 9 months, and I had 4 meniscus surgeries, 2 on each knee, and the
Wow.
arthritis from these procedures, and then carrying the weight and being inflamed and everything that goes
Yes.
with what you now understand.
Yes.
But and that was always the big thing, that when somebody would see me after all the weight loss, they go, "Oh my God, you just must feel so much better with all the weight off." And I go, "Well, actually, the funny thing is, when I still had 100 pounds to go, I hit fat adaptation and I flipped my metabolism back to the one we're all born with, and all the inflammation disappeared. And so I still went another 8 months to lose the other 100 pounds. But the pain
Wow.
was gone. And yes, I moved better on the court. I played tennis, pickleball, and platform tennis. And I moved better because there's less weight to carry. But the pain was completely all gone. And tennis elbow pain was all gone. And just by being fat adapted. So if he gets consistent, and I was only doing that with keto at being 20 carbs a day or less. I've morphed over the last 5-6 years to kind of what I would call nutrivore, because I just go for the most nutrient-dense bioavailable stuff. And so I was probably, and there is no fast rule of what is a carnivore. There's there's ketovore, there's carnivore, there's lion diet, and we can turn things into all different kinds of things. And but I'm now, because this is also just a quick little anecdote. So with going more full time with the coaching now myself, and being exposed to a number of different channels out there where I've been on, and all of a sudden I've got all these people that are following carnivore channels reaching out to me to coach. And I do this podcast, and I do another one with a cardiologist buddy, Dr. Ryan Cooley, called the Metabolic and and he took him from being plant-based vegan to now he's like me, where you would consider, well, yeah, we're 90% carnivore. I eat a lot of sour cream sauerkraut, because of the K vitamins are so critical for the heart reversal and everything. And he's big into that, and kimchi and stuff. And it would just be like the occasional small amount of berries. I make my own bone broth soup, and I'll throw some onion in there and some carrots in there, but always just really low. But now I'm just in the last month and a half deciding, well, even though I think I'm fairly carnivore, I've removed coffee, I've removed everything. And so I ate the sauerkraut until it was gone, and then I didn't rebuy it. And so even olives and just a couple of little things that I was doing. So it's just right now meat, fish, and eggs. And I had allowed a little creep to come back into my world last year. It was very stressful, and I did some things that I know are stupid. It made me feel like a hypocrite, and put a couple back on. I dropped 15 pounds in the last 5 months just by getting serious again and doing just the pure thing. And so I'm going to do a 60-90 day of this and just kind of ride out the year and see where it goes. But I was there already, but he can, just by not even being all the way carnivore. And I'm not going to tell him not to go all the way carnivore. for. Everybody has to find what works with
I want
them.
him to. Yeah, I try.
And when you're coaching, you got to meet people with where they're at and allow time to happen. You were up against the wall with your MS. And so
My story's
that's where
different.
you
Yeah,
were at, and you needed to do something.
100%. I want to point that out, Brett, that I would never have done this. I would never have done this in a million years had I not been desperate. It was desperation that brought me to this. But I try to tell people, just because you're not desperate, I'm telling you, you'll just be so much happier. Because I even take away the MS, I still had those other symptoms, where childhood, I always like struggled to get out of bed. Like, that sucks living like that. You don't want to live like that. Like, now I live a life now where I get up early and I'm like up with the sun practically. It's so nice. And I just do that on my own. Like, I don't feel like I got to hit the alarm back off and go. Like, I get up on my own, and then when I wake up, my eyes don't, it used to literally burn to open my eyes and hurt to keep my eyes open. And my eyes would be puffy and burning, and it would just hurt to keep my eyes open and be taxing. And it's so nice to wake up, and it's not taxing to be alive. It's not taxing to be awake. So for that alone is why if someone said to me, Colleen, you're good. Your MS is gone and it's never coming back. So you could go back to eating whatever you want. I'd be like, as long as I'm living in a human body, unless I live in, give me a superhuman body that's different, then I probably would eat other stuff. Because I won't lie, the other stuff was fun to eat. It's that instant dopamine hit. That's why I ate it all to begin with, and like breaded and fried zucchini and all the fried calamari, all that stuff. Like, I always loved stuff like that. But nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. Just nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. It's just, so for me, I would never go back.
And here's another one for I'm sure you've heard this already, but with your clients, it's hard to have food addictions. It's hard to have MS. We can all the Hostess pies and and all the treats and all the candy and all the things that we've become accustomed to.
All of that
and it
stuff.
can be hard to break out of that. Not as hard as some people actually think.
Yeah.
Because this way of doing it when your hormones are all working properly. But the story is, pick your heart, and then you wind up finding out, do you want to live with the arthritis and then not being able to get up? And I used to pass out after dinner by 7:30. I used to just go. At my in-laws' place, we'd be
my husband.
That was me on couches. I just be at 7 to 8 o'clock at night, and I'm like, now I can be up to 1, 2 in the morning, and I've got I always wake up well, but I'm up at 4 or 5 in the morning. I start working. I do things. I can, until I want to choose to go to sleep, I'm alert, and I could stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning if I had to.
Amazing.
And I'll drop one more nugget of information, and this just and you can back this up on ChatGPT. Because I was just playing with it the other day, and I'm going to use it just to make sure I quote this dead on right. But this is what people don't realize, and they need to realize. So when you are, actually, it was, here we go, 4 days ago, I play with ChatGPT, and then I don't want to say I argue with it, but there's narratives built into all of these AI tools. And so you have to realize that it's not just only coming back with study stuff. There's narrative built into things.
Okay.
But anyhow, so I asked ChatGPT, and I go, when you compare using glucose or glycolysis compared to fatty oxidation, beta oxidation, because our cells, other than red blood cells, all have mitochondria. And this is where I've deep dived the last 4 years so heavily. And so all of our cells are hybrid engines, and you can run off of glucose or you can run off of fatty acids. And this will get your husband right here. So when you're burning a molecule of glucose, it generates 30 to 32 ATP, which is the output of energy coming out of the mitochondria to fund the cell. There's other things beyond ATP that we're just starting to wake up to in the world. But when you're doing fatty acids, as your fuel source. So from your stored body fat, from the fat that was in your steak and egg that you ate, you're creating 106 ATP. So 4 to 5 times as much.
Crazy.
And then when you go and you are burning technically, and then you start breaking out the different kinds of fatty acids, and you're burning saturated fat, you are actually creating, instead of 106, 120 ATP. So do you want to burn glucose as your prime energy source and be a sugar burner person, or flip your metabolism to where you're now making 5 to 6 times the amount of energy, which is why you wake up bright-eyed, which is why you can work all day and night.
Seriously.
Because of all this. Because your body is burning what we were meant to be burning, and didn't go to this other metabolism that 95% of the world's living in.
Yes. And I didn't
There's
even
a
think
nugget.
that was possible for me, because I just was I never experienced this before, where I'm this alert and mentally clear and wide awake. And especially coming out of bed feeling like that, I'm like, I used to hear about it, and I used to think like that could never happen to me. Like that happens to other people. That probably would never happen to me. It's too good to be true. And
now you're a whole
and
other person.
especially since intermittent fasting, I feel like even better, especially moving my fasting window a little earlier in the day. That has definitely
you're
taken
deeper into ketosis back into ketosis, because as carnivores, as opposed to kind of the 20 carb keto with still broccoli and asparagus and things like this in there, because you tend to be bringing in that much more protein and fat. With that amount of protein, you can cycle for an hour or 2 or 3 longer, going out of ketosis as you're using all of that protein. And so, but then you come right back into it, because once you're fat adapted and you're metabolically flexible, you can go out and you come right back in. But because you move that food window just a little bit more, you're that much quicker, deeper back into normal ketosis, which is going to help you with all of your sleep cycles and everything. And so many things that build into all of this. But
so many things I could talk about forever. My goal, I would love to have a podcast on this, and my dream would be to do a YouTube like you're doing one day. And hopefully, right now, I'm full-time teaching, so but I'm gonna work. It's something I'm gonna work on this year. It's a goal of mine to work on it. And even if I just post videos of me at home, meal prepping, and it'll help other people to get ideas. I did just recently make a video on my raw meat smoothie, because I got a lot of comments about that since I brought it up. And people are like, I want to know, what is this raw meat smoothie? And the raw ground organs. And I actually switched to, if you do no coffee at all.
Well, just recently, just this last month. So I've been a coffee to, one big 32 ounce or 1.5 to 2 a day of those. So I've played
around with coffee a little. In the beginning, I cut it out for a long time, because I felt like after I had coffee, I felt worse. And that was especially, even before I went carnivore, I cut it out for a while, because I just felt like I would take 2 sips of coffee and feel worse. So I don't know if it was the type of coffee. I got rid of the Keurig because I was paranoid about like molds and stuff in the Keurig. So I got rid of that. I got a regular coffee maker. I bought a coffee that is like certified mold free. The brand is Life Boost. It's like one of the cleanest coffees. But now I've switched to trying the mushroom coffees, because Dr. Terry Walls, and there's a mushroom coffee that has like all the major mushrooms that Dr. Terry Walls.
Is that the one they call mud?
No, it's
Rise.
It's Rise. It has king trumpet, turkey tail. It has I think shiitake and lion's mane, like the brain, the mushrooms that are like healthy brain support. And she swears by them, so I'm like, hey, I trust her. I'm gonna trust her with this. So I look at it almost as like a supplement, because I don't sit around, like I don't have all those mushrooms like available to me everywhere. So I'm like, may as well try it and see how it goes. And I fat bomb it. with a lot of like cultured ghee. I use cultured ghee because I don't want the dairy, the pasteurized dairy protein. And that works really well for me. And I believe there's naturally occurring MCT oils in there. And I put a little bit of I also do a little bit of MCT oil, the brain octane fuel.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll do like a little spoonful of that in the morning. I do literally anything for my brain health, because my goal is to have these lesions not even show up anymore or shrink and, show up as just scar tissue. That's my goal.
Well, and the ketones are so important for that because it is
Yeah.
another alternative fuel that can go through the blood-brain barrier, and all of the brain cells can use it. Yes, we need glucose for parts of the brain. Some function just great off of ketones and are actually preferable because when it's there, they use them. And the heart uses it. If it's there, it uses it exclusively.
Wow,
So, I mean, PET scans have shown that with people that were in cancer, and all of a sudden they get into ketosis because they're doing the cancer treatment, the pressed pulse cancer treatment with all this, and they're in such ketosis. And then when they do the PET scan, you can't even see the heart because there's no glucose being used by the heart because it's just full all ketone. So there's just so many things. And that's why I went from writing a book about ketosis to one of the books is just instead going to be about metabolic therapy. And that's why I am
You're
My Metabolic Life.
All that you know, Brett. You're like a doctor. Me and Emily and I talked about you the other day. She's like, talking to him is like talking to an encyclopedia. And I said, yes.
Hopefully with just a little bit of personality.
Yes, you got great personality. You're the whole package, Brett.
Oh, but
we
no,
love you.
I mean, well, it's become an obsession of mine. I just had to figure out why every industry that I worked for in my whole being a professional and an adult was screwed up and has everything upside down and is doing so much more damage than they're helping. And so that's the mission. So let me just mention one quick thing, and then I want to ask you one last thing. Yeah. So just for people that are because they know you, they want to come see this and everything, I just want to mention there's a new organization. It's a nonprofit, and it's called Metabolic Revolution, and we're having a rally in Washington, D.C. I mentioned this to you before, but on all of my videos, I just want to make sure it gets out there. So please, everybody go visit metabolicrevolution.org. And if you can't make it to Washington, D.C., it's a movement. It's going to be long lasting, just like the American Cancer or the American Diabetes Society. .org or AmericanDiabetes.com. I can't remember, but it's in a blog on my website. Go check it out. These places to come and replace the things that aren't working and to get the activism and the advocacy for all the people that are suffering out there. That's what these are about, and to make the guidelines real instead of not being about healing first. So last question for you, because I'm taking up way too much of your afternoon and your time away from your little guy. With your coaching, and I also want to let you know, because you have a long last name. I'm Smith. You're DeFrancesco. It's taking up a lot. So Beef Body Healing is your handle at Instagram, correct?
Yeah, Beef Body Healing is handle on Instagram, and
because it cuts off after E. We can't see the rest of healing on the screen.
Sorry, I should have just.
So I just want to make sure people know how to find you. What are the other ways that they can find? What are the best ways for people to find you if they go, oh my God, I would love for Colleen to help me?
Yeah, well, the best way right now would be to DM me on Instagram. So that's Beef Body Healing. And I'm in the infancy stage of YouTube because I'm trying to navigate everything and figure everything out. And being a full-time mother and teacher, it's not easy to manage all of these platforms. So bear with me because I'm coming in with stuff. I promise.
I'm aware.
And I really want to get going on them. So YouTube, Beef Body Healing. There's only just YouTube shorts on there right now, and they're just the same shorts from like my TikTok and my Instagram. My Instagram is really my main platform for now, and then TikTok, like I said, is same thing. It's in the infancy stages with YouTube. But I just threw myself on TikTok just to reach. I don't expect it to go anywhere on TikTok. But I just figured why not add it in, and if I can reach a younger generation, because I know all the young kids are on TikTok. So I'm like, maybe if I can reach some of these young kids and get them before they suffer like I did, then it'll be worth it and it'll be helpful. So why not? But
Amen.
yeah, yeah. But I'm hoping to really get rolling a little bit more with like YouTubing and dabble into the podcasting world. I would love to do that. I would love to start writing a book. I really want to get that going in the next year, hopefully start at least the process of writing. So we'll see. I really want to spread awareness everywhere. And I feel like I feel like a little bit obsessed because I cannot believe the transformation in myself. And I just want to shout it from the rooftops to everybody. And, you know, I also am a mother and I work in a school with innocent children and I see what we feed them in the school and it drives me insane. So I just want to be a part of the contribution of change in this country for our food, what we're doing to people. So anyway, I
Absolutely.
can contribute.
We're in it together. We know we're on the same mission, and I'm so
Yes.
happy to be on that mission with you. Colleen, I
Yes.
can't thank you enough for spending this amount of time. And for anybody who made it this long, please like and subscribe to the channel. Go follow Colleen at Beef Body Healing on Instagram. I believe there's probably in the not too distant future going to be a website that you can follow her and learn things
Yes.
about more about her. And give me 1 minute, but I'm going to sign off. Everybody, thanks so much for today. I'm sure you found Colleen incredibly inspirational. And please share this with all of your people that you know in your life that are suffering from MS. And follow Emily and Colleen both on my channel about their MS transformations and they did a great one on Emily's podcast together that you should watch as well. There's so much that you can do. Metabolic therapy is real. It works on almost everything in the world. And you're going to have energy like you've never seen before in your life. So, Colleen, stay with me for a sec.
Yeah, Brett, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, I'm so happy you were able to join me on a Sunday. Thank you so much.